Hello everyone, Kent Bressler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, a podcast endorsed and sponsored by KidneySolutions.org.
Hello, everyone. This is Kent Bressler. We're going to get started because I have a good friend, Rachelle McCray from Natera. So let's start before I introduce her with a prayer. Maybe the sorrow lasts the night, but joy comes in the morning. Dear Lord, we pray for the grace and strength to believe in you, both in good and bad times. The Bible confirms that you delight in us and rejoice with us with singing. Today, from the bottom of our hearts, we invite you to fill us with your joy, which will give us true peace. Amen. This morning, I'm going to talk with Rachelle McCray. She's a television host, an entrepreneur, and a patient advocate for chronic kidney disease. She's the founder and a creator of a 501c nonprofit that gives comfort teddy bear kits to children and families affected by kidney disease. It's called the MinMinBear Foundation. We'll talk about that later. She brings a personal perspective to her advocacy as she and multiple generations of her family have lived with chronic kidney disease. Rachelle credits Natera's Renasight genetic test for giving her the knowledge to make more informed decisions about her care. Her goal is for other CKD patients to have the same confidence and participation in their own health care. Rachelle is also a paid consultant for Natera, but we get her in here because of her knowledge base and her well-founded points about what Natera has, but what she's undergone with CKD. Welcome, Rachel. I enjoyed our talk yesterday when we first met. I understand that you have Alport Syndrome. That's a form of CKD. Can you kind of fill us in and kind of tell us what Alport's is all about?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. But Alport syndrome is a genetic disposition. And basically it kind of damages tiny blood vessels in your kidneys or the glomeruli that's there. So you might hear also referred to as glomerular nephritis. And the thing about it is that it's generally passed down through families and it's passed down through specific genes. So in my case, I have that what they call the X-linked version, which means that my mother was affected and my grandfather was affected. So that's how my gene was passed, but there are several different mutations of it. It's also considered kind of a collagen disorder, if you will, because it affects the collagen in your body. So that means that it can affect more than your kidneys. So for example, my version affects my eyes, my ears, and my kidneys, and can also cause a couple of other things. But generally, those are the main points of Alport syndrome. A lot of people, like myself, might not even have any symptoms. You know, as you know, silent kidney disease can be silent. You might spill blood or protein, something like that, in your urine, but you can go a very long time with Alport syndrome without even realizing that you have it, based off of the way that the disease kind of acts and behaves.
Yeah, it's kind of a stinker kidney disease. It affects a lot of things early on. It's doing its quote damage as it goes along. The key here is genetics. All right. A lot of kidney disease is not connected directly to genetics, but this one particularly, Alport's, is. And so knowing you had a family history of kidney disease, what conversations did you have with your physicians on the future of your health when you were told that you had this? How did how'd that set with you? What was your feeling?
Well, it's interesting because, to be honest with you, very little conversations were ever had with my physicians about my disease. Now, I always have to preface this when I talk about this because when I started getting or having more doctor's appointments was after my mom went into kidney failure in her 30s. My mom is a young mom. She fainted at my high school graduation. And that was really where, we knew something was really wrong. Now, keep in mind, this is a year of doctor's visits, things going wrong, my mom being dizzy, my mom having other side effects going to the doctor. And would you believe that like nothing ever showed up in her blood work or anything else? Everything looked fine. The interesting thing is my mom was actually diagnosed at the age of 3 via a biopsy with Alport syndrome because her father, or my paternal grandfather, he died on dialysis at the age of 23. And so this was something that had been a part of my family, but never really talked about, even with me growing up, because honestly, it kind of was like, well, we'll worry about that later because there was no signs or symptoms. So I really didn't start to get any information or care until I had an official diagnosis. And that diagnosis didn't come until I was 36 years old.
36.
And so at 16, I was having conversations because my mom was sick. And at 18, I had conversations because my mom was sick. And I had a creatinine clearance done and I had some blood work done. And that was about it. And the conversation was, we'll see you in 10 to 15 years because it's not necessary. There's really nothing we can do if you have Alports anyways. Now, keep in mind, this was back in 2002 when, the genetic testing was few and far between. If you wanted to test genetics, it was like $15,000 to $20,000 per gene to test. And because Alport syndrome has the X-linked version, the auto-recessive version, and the autodominant version, you actually have to know which gene you're testing to figure out which version you have. So because my mom had been tested via biopsy at such a young age, the information wasn't really there. We just knew she had Alport syndrome. So in order for me to get a correct diagnosis, we essentially had to test potentially 3 to 4 genes. And so, all of those things led up to no care for me because the way the doctors looked at it at the time was there's really nothing we can do for you anyways. There's some experimental medication out there that may or may not help you. So basically, just, don't get pregnant too young so that we can preserve your kidney function and just, keep an eye on it. Let us know if you have symptoms. I mean, that was the discussion. And that was kind of it at the time.
Yeah. That's kind of the discussion that you have when you have conditions like kidney conditions like this,
right?
Like with FSGS and Alports, they just kind of knock along, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And so I went back yesterday and asked you specifically if you had any protein in your urine. When was the first time you knew you had protein in your urine?
I would say since I was likely a teenager, but I didn't know what it was. And as a teenage girl, you have conversations with your mom. My mom and I are very close. And so if I ever had a question, I have a mother that I can ask and she would tell me whatever it was. And so I didn't have a need to be embarrassed. Right.
Right.
But as a teenager, I don't think you really understand what protein is or why it looks different.
No.
Honestly, I just thought that's what everybody's urine looked like.
Yeah.
Come fast forward to an adult. And I asked my mom one time as an adult, I said, hey, by the way, my urine kind of looks like this. Is that kind of part of this kidney situation? And she's like, how long has that been going on? And I said, well, as long as I can remember. But it would show up in urine tests. So sure. We knew I had protein and blood in my urine at a young age. But it was like, okay, well, we think you have it. Do you want to get tested? Yes or no? Or do you want to have a biopsy? And a biopsy, I have, aside from Alports, I have other medical diagnoses. And those medical diagnoses don't really have anything to do with kidneys. But it was one of those things that it was like, well, I was getting tested and there was really no reason to know. And it doesn't really affect anything else. So I hate to say this, but it was like, why bother? Yeah. So from a young age, I think it was always there, Kent. I just think that you don't realize it's abnormal because who tells you that your urine isn't supposed to be foamy or whatever it is?
Exactly.
That's not something that we necessarily really think about. And you also have to realize my mom being so young and my mom not realizing that probably in her late 20s was already in kidney failure. She didn't recognize that it was wrong for her either because there was no education on that front. So,
right.
Everything in hindsight looks different, right?
Sure. And that's the way we look at things in hindsight.
Right.
When you have kidney disease, I
Sure.
wish I could have done this. The point being is that the takeaway here, there should be no protein in your urine, period.
Correct.
That's just a red flag. And if you're listening, folks, if you have protein in your urine, if you recognize that, that's not a waiting situation. That's a let's figure it out situation. Okay. So
right. And I encourage, if you don't know what protein looks like, because I didn't, I hate to say this, but like Google can be, as much as it can be a deterrent, it can also be really great when it comes to health things. If you don't know what it might look like, I encourage people to Google it and look at images online and say, well, it kind of looks like that, so maybe I should call the doctor, because until people tell you or show you what it looks like, you don't realize necessarily it's wrong because it's looked like that for so long, right?
Right. And that's in your urine. There is a test, a simple little $5 test that you can take to see if you've got protein in your urine. And we've stressed that in this conversations before. But my point is, we both, with kidney disease patients, it's there and that there's no reason for it. It's because you have something going on with your kidneys that needs to be checked out. So So when did you first hear about Renasight?
So only a couple years ago, I was 30, I think I was 36. And as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I work with patients as a patient advocate based off of the road that I've walked with not only myself, but my mom and other members of my family. And so I help patients advocate for themselves. And one of the things is you can't advocate for everybody else and not advocate for yourself, right?
Exactly.
And it's so easy to do, so to forget about you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was on a forum. My mom is currently in need of her second living donor kidney transplant as we speak right now. We are still looking for a living donor match. All of our friends and family have been tested. My mom was getting sicker with her first kidney transplant in 2000. I think it was 2019 or 2020. And so I was looking for ways to advocate for my mom because I was convinced she was going back into renal failure, but nothing was showing up. And so I started looking for things online to give better diagnoses to my mom because I felt as though the care team she was with at the time was not doing their job the way that I would like to see it done. And so I found Renasight I ended up on a Zoom call with physicians online talking about this test. And I was there to get information from my mom, but I didn't realize it was a physician-led call. I thought it was just about a product that I wanted to learn more about. So to make a long story short, I brought the test to my doctor and said, I want to have this done. I learned about this test called Renasight, and it's affordable. I don't have to have a biopsy, and I think it will tell me whether or not I have Alport syndrome, and I do have protein in my urine. Why don't we get some answers? Because you have to understand, I was also experiencing some other symptoms that concerned me that could be directly related to my kidney disease, my ears and my eyes. And so I had the test done, and it came back that I had Alport syndrome, except now I knew which Alport syndrome I had.
Which one? Right.
So
you could identify.
Now, yes, I can make different decisions about my kidney health. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's the point that we want to stress here. You can't go along blindly not knowing, because if you don't know, you can't treat it. So there's not, quote, a lot of treatment going on, but there are some, and there's research going on, and it's better to know and work at, keeping blood pressure, all those things under control, right? You need to be under physician supervision. That's exactly what needs to happen. Okay.
Right.
You can't just go on and say, well, I'll just give my yearly checkup or this or that. So Renasight in itself identified that they also have other products that identify FSGS. So that's very important too, to remember that this genetic testing, I think, is, it's just monumental in the kidney space. It's something that needs to continue and be done aggressively. The research needs to continue. I think it holds like a key to a lot of things, and quote, maybe a cure someday. Who knows? Right?
Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
and two, I think that, because Natera has different products, they have the Prospera. That was what I was looking into for my mom, because on the other side of the genetic panel, there is this opportunity to monitor your kidney transplant. And that's what I was looking for my mom. Is I was like, there has to be a better way, because every time she had a biopsy, she was hospitalized. And it wasn't a good option for her. She didn't react well. She was already having issues. And I had already lived through kidney failure with my mom once. And so I knew what it looked like with my mom. And so as much as I was like, she's going into kidney failure, or her kidneys at least rejecting, and the other side is telling me, well, everything on her blood work looks great, or this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
it's like, but something's wrong. And so I went down this rabbit hole, so to speak, to find a better solution. I found Prospera, but in finding Prospera, I also found a solution for myself, not having a kidney transplant and still seeking answers about my genetics as well. And so it was amazing to me that this company had created something that kind of comes full circle and has a full suite that can really help and manage anyone's CKD or questions from pre-diagnosis, obviously, all the way through post-transplant. And that was one of the things that really attracted me to it.
And see, many times, in the people that I've talked with over my quite a few years of working with patients, I always hear this: I didn't know, I had no clue. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I either stumbled into it, or, on a physical, or I just got so sick and I come and here I am in kidney failure. And,
Sure.
there are a lot of things that go into that, but I'm just saying, whenever you have an opportunity to really strike out and figure out what's going on, you got a leg up. You got a chance. There's hope. And you can't have any hope just going blindly until they tell you, that you're in total renal failure. You're going to need a transplant or dialysis. That's a hard time to figure it out. Right.
Right.
So
especially when,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially when, again, my mom had been going for a whole year. You would think at some point we would have come across it, and we didn't.
Right.
And that wasn't to anyone's fault. Again, this was what is that, 20 years ago now?
Absolutely.
So science and medicine have come a long way. But again, I think the thing that I like to stress is that if you know someone in your family that's had kidney disease, or if you have someone who's had a kidney transplant, or if you've had a history, there is a point in there where sometimes, unfortunately, as patients, we have to take control. And I had to walk this test myself into my doctor and say, will you please order this for me? Because it had never been given to me as an option. And so sometimes we have to do that. And the thing that I like to tell people is there's nothing wrong with advocating and using your voice. We are our own best advocates. You'll hear me say that, or when I have conversations with people. You are the only person who lives inside of your body. And you know what it's like when you're nauseous, and you know what it's like when you're dizzy, and you know when something isn't right. And if you are sitting in a physician's office and you just know that there's something else better out there for you, and this person isn't listening, you have permission to find someone else. People don't have to stay with care that isn't helpful to them. And so I encourage this often, just because I watched it go happen with my own mom, right? And so, Ken, I really like to stress that when I talk to other patients, because I think sometimes we forget that we have a voice and we are allowed to use it in a physician setting when we've come to our doctors with solutions that can help us.
Is it not also the fact that if you don't have options, if you're just going through this process without any options, you're not being schooled and given all your options, who's going to make a decision? You can't make a decision without options. So consequently, being your own advocate allows you to say, Doc, I don't get this. I got something you're telling me we need to watch. I don't feel comfortable watching it. I have it. What can we do about it? What are my options? Just give me a chance. Then you can at least say, you've started to explore it. Don't just say, well, he says, okay, we're going to watch it and fine, and we'll see you in 6 months. No. That's probably not a good course of action.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So where are you right now in your journey with Alport, you personally?
Well, as we record this podcast, I'm in the middle of a 24-hour urine clearance, creatinine clearance. So that's happening. I found after after I had my Renasight results, Natera offers this opportunity to speak with a genetic counselor, and it's free, which I took advantage of because I thought that I understand Alport to an extent. I'm on these groups and forums, but I guarantee you a geneticist can tell me more. And it's already covered by the test that I had. So I had nothing to lose by sitting on the phone with someone who's an expert in my genes. So I sat with them. It was a fantastic meeting. I learned more about Alport syndrome in 1 hour than I had in 36 years of being alive. And what was amazing about it was that gave me the opportunity to make targeted questions that I was going to have with a nephrologist that I was about to seek out. Because remember, I was not under nephrology care at this point because I was told I didn't need nephrology care. So what I did at that point is I went into a Facebook group, or several Facebook groups I'm a part of as a patient. And I said, I am looking for a nephrologist that specializes in this condition, because now I can say that because I know which gene I have. I know what it's affecting in me. And I know that I need to talk to somebody about my specific kidney disease. Because here's the deal, not like there are doctors out there that specialize in FSGS. There are doctors out there that specialize in Alport syndrome. There are experts in these fields. And sometimes, depending on the answers that you're seeking, you might look for that specific doctor in your area. It may not be a general nephrologist. So I got recommendations from other patients. And then I looked at my insurance to see which offices I could go to. And I made a phone call and I got on a waiting list because, as you can imagine, specialists can take a little while to get into.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I now work with a nephrologist who not only, by the way, at my very first appointment, when I sat in his office, I had told the scheduler, I said, I have Alport syndrome and I'm looking for a doctor who specializes in it. Well, they did not realize I had already had genetic testing. They kind of assumed that I thought I had it based off a kidney history.
You're right. And your
Kent, I kid you not. This nephrologist walked into the office with a Natera Renasight test and said, okay, we're going to test you to figure out what's going on.
No, here's my results.
And here I am with my folder. And I said, I already did that. And he was like, so this doctor was already armed and ready to get the answers that if I didn't have Alports, why am I spilling protein? So, it made me feel really comforted coming into a doctor that came walking in with, I'm going to figure out what's wrong. As a young patient, I can tell you something that has happened to me a lot has been, well, you're too young. We'll kind of worry about it later.
Exactly.
And I appreciated that this physician didn't care how old I was. He didn't like that I was spilling protein into my urine.
No, that's the point.
So I came into this office, and to your point, where am I now? I am at a point where I am working with my specialist, and I have regular appointments. He's running some tests. He is getting a better baseline for me. And we are working together to take control of what I can over my my kidney disease, for whatever that means. He is encouraged that I have not had kidney failure at my age yet. I'm 2 years older than my mom was when she had her first transplant. But it doesn't mean that based off of the version that I have, unfortunately for me, a kidney transplant is always kind of, quote, on the table. And so right now we're exploring medication options that might slow the progression of my disease.
Sure. They're out there.
And we are exploring diets. We explore what's going on. So, having a specialist who understands my disease and not just saying, well, I'll deal with it later, has been a real gift. And I wouldn't have this gift without this test. And that's really the whole of it.
And the knowledge you gain from not only the test, but just being exposed to your mother's, how she's worked her way through this particular kidney disease. I'm just really amazed how kidney disease is so different in so many people. There's no track record of equality with this disease. It doesn't exist. Everybody's different.
Right.
Everybody presents differently, but the point just dwells on the fact that protein's not supposed to be in your urine. And maybe there's no magic pill or shot or bullet or whatever they can give you that can fix it, but you need to know that you have it so that you can be prepared to deal with it before you get into renal failure.
Right.
That's the biggest
And
point.
I think, that's something, because the thing they talk about with kidney disease is if you don't know you have a history, like my mom had a biopsy at 3,
At
but
3
because
years old.
Alport syndrome didn't have the same type of medication or options available at the time, there was nothing that anyone did for her for all those years. And so she never kept an eye on her kidneys. And so again, she faints at my high school graduation after a year of being sick. And the news is, you are at less than 20%. You need a living kidney transplant, and you needed it like yesterday.
Yeah.
So, she was in stage 5 renal failure at 34 or 33 years old. And she had probably been in renal failure, Kent, for years leading up to that. That was not something that happened overnight.
I guarantee it doesn't happen overnight. I experienced it with FSGS, like I told you the other day.
Yes.
But just walk through this disease process, and it took its time getting to me. But when it got there, it took a vengeance. It did it very quickly.
It was quick.
All right.
Sure.
So the preparation of my point, I wished I'd had this type of opportunity to speak to people, to be mentored by someone who had experienced it, to tell me, no, we don't wait. We take that out of our vocabulary. Waiting is not possible. It doesn't work. So, and you're a tremendous advocate for this kind of thing. And I applaud you. I hope that your progression goes well, but what do you think you want to do in order to address this? I know what you're doing, but what's your hope? What is your hope about it?
I mean, I hope that we can get to a point where we can have better medical solutions for people who have a disease like this. I mean, right now, the answer to Alport syndrome and kidney failure is a kidney transplant. And as great as that option is, and as thankful as I am for it, it's not a great answer for everyone, because there comes a point where people cannot get transplants. There comes a point where you're not eligible. There comes a point where you can't find a donor. People die every day from kidney disease. People die every day from waiting. And so, my hope is that as patients, we become more empowered in our health care journey, and that we can take the power and be advocates for ourselves and the people that we love. Because the more that we advocate and the more that we raise our voice, the more that there will be attention on finding cures and caring for people that we love who go through this. And I think that my hope is that we all learn that it's okay to use your voice, and it's okay to advocate, and that's something that matters. One voice matters in every office and in every situation. Being the person who, it might feel sometimes like you're being a thorn in people's sides, but
yeah, right.
That's not always the worst thing, because sometimes you have to be, and you just have to be adamant and confident. And if you don't know it, there are other people out there who might, and don't stop searching. There are a lot of people who are trying to help people. There's people like Natera who are trying to help people like us, and they're creating solutions to do so. And so I just encourage people to just, keep fighting for not only you, but people that you love.
That's a great segue to what I'm going to make a comment on. That's what we do. That's what we do at Kidney Solutions. We're a mentoring organization. We're not a donor searching organization. We're a mentoring organization. We try to take care of people to help them find a kidney. If their Lord's going to send somebody a kidney, we'll be there with them, and especially when they have the transplant. But the biggest thing about us is that we just deal with taking care of you afterwards, helping you get through keeping your kidney. Having a transplant's nothing. Trust me, it's nothing. It's keeping your kidney that's most important. And you're right, but there's going to be other alternatives that are coming. And it's nice to have people like Natera in the forefront of this research, and I'm really happy that they come on and they sent you along. Let me ask you, would you like to talk about your 501c?
Oh, sure. We can talk about the bears. The bears are always fun to talk about.
Right. I have no clue what it's about, but I know my listeners are going to really want to know. And so, if you would just fill me in, what is MinMinBears?
Sure. So MinMinBears is named after my mom, Mindy, as we've talked about a lot about her on this podcast. And they were originally started to kind of educate others about living organ donation, that we can be living donors to people in need, because we only need one healthy kidney to live a thriving life. And so My mom had been through a kidney transplant. So I had mentioned that her father had passed away at the age of 23. My dad's father ended up being a perfect match for her original kidney. And so my other grandfather actually donated his kidney to my mom in 2005. And so when I was Miss Arizona at the time, I won Miss Arizona in 2011. I advocated that year to teach others about the gift of living organ donation. So fast forward to now, we decided to make it a 501c3 in 2020. And now what we do is we've evolved into sending comfort bear kits to children and families affected by kidney disease. And so these kits go to children's hospitals, they go to dialysis centers, they go to nephrology offices for patients. And they are cuddly teddy bears that come with a coloring book that's filled with information from diagnosis to transplants and activities and things to do to be engaged in your care. It comes with information about Natera because Natera has been kind enough to sponsor bears so that we are able to actually send them out to patients at no charge. And we basically have a bear that tells a story for every single person. A teddy bear. Yeah. And it tells the story of the transplant story from the donor to the recipient, to the nurse, to the caregiver, and everyone in between, to the geneticists. Our bears all tell the story in full circle to teach about the kidney transplant and the kidney disease process. So.
That MinMinBear, I'm going to put this down. I want everybody to listen to this. It's MinMinBear Foundation. MinMinBear Foundation.org. Got to go to it. I looked at it. I'm a teddy bear lover anyway. I'm a teddy
Kent, I'm going to have to send you one. I'll have to send you a bear.
I would love to. And we have patients. We have patients, a lot of patients. And if I could incorporate that in some way, I would. I would love to get, especially some of our kids. All right. So
yeah, I would love to. Yeah, just let me know.
Yeah,
I would love to.
That's something that we have a company here, Natera, and I'm gonna spout it because this is my podcast, that allows people to get some funding to help get the word out. All right. Yeah, I know they're for profit. So for profit is a good thing because they're forefront. They're going to turn research into hope. All right. And they've already done that. So why in the world can you not embrace the fact that this is what we need in this sphere? I spent a whole lifetime, over 40 years, with kidney disease, and I was very fortunate to get a transplant from my brother. But let me tell you what, there are a lot of people out there that don't have that fundamental ability, and some that have had several transplants, 1, 2, 3, and that can no longer be transplanted. So everything that companies like Natera do enables this to open up to the whole world the fact that kidney disease is not silent. And it's not rare. Although it is, it's not rare to put someone who has it. If you've got it, you know you can come forward. There are people out here that will help you, right? You picked up on Rachelle McCray today, right? And you know about kidney solutions. So let's do one thing. When you're thinking about all of the kidney disease and how bad it is that you just got diagnosed, if you want answers, give us a call. You know what our number is, kidneysolutions.org, 830-285-2140. And make one thing for sure. Know that when you call that number, we're going to help, right? We're going to take advantage of everything that you know and make you better, all right? We're not going to cure you, but we're going to make it fun to at least know what your kidney disease is all about. And we have people, and thankfully, Rachelle McCray now I think is a person we can go to. And I love that idea. Thank you so much today, Rachelle. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, everybody. You've had my spiel, and you got to listen to Rachelle McCray today and MinMinBears. So let's keep the fight going, but let's not make it a fight. Let's make it improvements, and let's make it fun. Let's get through this and know that you have a friend. Until the next time, keep breathing.